Welcome to Your Vote Counts, candidate interviews sponsored by Capital Community TV and the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties. My name is Bernadine Anderson, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization that works to educate ourselves and the public about government issues and civic responsibilities. In this program, we will present the candidates for the Legislative House District 20. They are alphabetically Paul Evans and Selma Pierce. Our format for this forum is as follows. Each candidate has 3 minutes to give an opening statement outlining their background, qualifications, and top priorities if elected. Following that, each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to answer questions that have been prepared by League members on current issues. The candidates were not given these questions ahead of time. At the end, the candidates will have 2 minutes to make closing statements in which to state the legacy they would like to leave if they are elected to that office. Seating was not designated, and question-response order will rotate. We will begin with Ms. Pierce as candidate A for her opening remarks.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. It's an honor. I'm Selma Pierce, and I'm running for House District 20, which includes Monmouth, Independence, Salem, West Salem, and South Salem. So I run because I want to give back to my community. Too often we have community leaders that are asked to run, and they say, no, not me, never. It is my responsibility to run. I come from an ordinary family. I started out as a file clerk with the state. My dad worked as a state auditor. My mom started canning pineapple in a factory and worked her way up to being a computer programmer for the federal government. I'm a dentist, and I've been married for 37 years. I also have 2 wonderful children that are my kids. The key to being a good dentist is to listen to your patients. That way, by listening carefully, I can find out what they need and what they really want. I spent many years giving back to my community, working in the trenches of the neighborhoods, finding out what the problems are, what the issues are, and what works. So a couple of years ago, my husband, Bud Pierce, ran for governor. I was very fortunate to be able to go around the state with him to see what Oregon is. Oregon is full of really good people, really hardworking people, people that are very concerned, and that people who are worried about the future of our state. They are interested in issues such as education, homelessness, affordable housing, and they are interested in the small businesses in their communities so that they can thrive and prosper. So I am running to be the voice of the people of House District 20 to go to the Capitol to be their representative. I will represent you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, your opening remarks.
Thank you. I want to begin by saying thank you for arranging this forum. Thank you to Dr. Pierce for being a part of it. And I want to thank the constituents of House District 20 for the last 4 years, giving me the opportunity of a lifetime to be their voice in the Capitol. I believe over the last 4 years we've made progress. We have helped the economy. We've made progress in terms of investments in housing and healthcare. We've made significant investments in veterans outreach and services. And I believe we've made forward steps. As you begin preparing for this election, I ask you to compare, contrast, and consider the most important factors in any election. And I believe those are service, leadership, and results. Service means putting the needs of the nation, the state, and the community ahead of your own. It means standing up. It means joining in. It means working with everybody you possibly can have an opportunity to work with and learn lessons together. I've done this over the last 30 years as a city councilor, as a mayor, as a school board member, as a military officer, as a teacher, and some years ago as a volunteer firefighter. I believe at the end of the day, service is about leadership. It is about learning how to do things, taking ideas and facilitating real progress. Leadership is one of those things that is earned. It's not bought, it can't be given. It's learned through service, it's learned through experience. As the chair of the House Veterans Committee on Veterans and Emergency Preparedness, I lead a group of 8 members, equal numbers, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. We've made significant progress, passed big and small pieces of legislation, and done so without a single dissenting vote. Leadership is that art of knowing how to bring people together around common cause and facilitating results. And when it comes to results, over the last 4 years, I believe we've made progress as a state and in the local area. At the state level, we've increased the minimum wage. We've made the workplace more safe, more equitable, more fair. We've expanded healthcare opportunities for thousands and thousands of families. We've done our best to be good stewards of the environment. Here locally, we've also made significant investments and will continue to make significant investments. We have $60 million set aside for the seismic upgrade of the Center Street Bridge. We also have made investments in the Career Technical Education Center. $1 million of state monies went into that. We've made investments in the McLaren Learning Center for student success. We've also put capital programs together at Western Oregon University, allowing them to grow. And in this last session, we were able to put money aside for the Independence Landing Project, which is helping to spur the renaissance that's going on in the community. At the end of the day, I believe this election comes down to service, to leadership, and results. I look forward to this conversation, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. We're going to begin our first question with Mr. Evans. What do you recommend to make Oregon's infrastructure and population more resilient to seismic, flood, and wildfire disasters?
So, thank you for that question. As the chair of the House Veterans Committee on Emergency Preparedness and Veterans, this is one of the things that actually keeps me up every night. We have made significant investments in terms of seismic upgrades of public safety facilities, schools, and police and fire. But we need to do that for a larger area, larger number of groups that could be eligible for those types of investments. We also need to change the language, because right now, through a specific interpretation, it's very difficult to actually remodel. You have to actually start over and build as opposed to remodel with the bonding that's available. We've also passed legislation that increases the forward deployment of equipment. I passed a bill called Lend-Lease in the last legislative session that will actually put $5 million of equipment into regional and community areas, but it actually loans out equipment as opposed to giving out the cash. And as a state, we need to increase education in terms of what communities of interest and what individual citizens can do to be more prepared. We have a lot of work to do. We have begun, but we have more to do.
Thank you. Ms. Pierce.
Well, I went to the Get Ready Salem just this past weekend. And there they were trying to help a lot of people get familiar with what they can do to help themselves when there is a natural disaster. Because when something happens, you're not there. They're not there necessarily. It may take a few days for them to come. Number one, you should make sure you know what the people in your area do and what their expertise are. You should talk with your family so that they know what they need to do. You need to prepare an emergency kit so that you would have food and water for a few days, as well as clothing and other tools that may be helpful. You need to learn CPR and first aid so that you can help each other. But also, you should be familiar with things that you need to watch for. For example, if there should be a gas leak, what should you do? If you also need to think if there should be a flood, for example, you should prepare your home ahead of time. Make sure that there is good flow away from the home and that you would be very safe. Also, it is very important to maintain communication so you know what to expect. Because really, when something happens, and so let's say the bridge should fail, you need to be able to prepare and take care of yourself and those in your neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, question 2 comes to you first.
Okay.
After several years with the coordinated care model for the Oregon Health Plan, what is your opinion of the implementation, and would you propose any changes statewide?
I noticed that with the CCO model right now, that they are pushing healthcare down to the local level, which is very important. It is very important that you can do what you need for your area versus somebody else. So rather than having planning from above or planning from Salem for the whole state, it is very nice that it is down at the county level so that people know what is necessary at their level. For example, it is interesting that the CCOs are now including dental care and mental health care, which is very, very necessary in our area. Mental health is one issue that is very difficult in this area because there's not really a good setup of mental health facilities or even providers. So we need to make sure that we do put money into that. Because in different areas, different people have different needs. So I like the idea of the CCOs being local, and it is also good that we have actually reached about 95% of our population being covered. Healthcare is very, very important. Before the CCO system, I had actually worked in and set up a free dental clinic called Mission of Mercy. We treated over 1,200 patients. So these were 1,200 patients that did not have insurance, and they had needs that were ranged from very small to large. So it was very helpful that we were able to have something such as the CCOs to help us with medical and dental care and mental health care for our population.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, question 2.
Yes, so when it comes to coordinated care organizations, there's a number of things that I think enter into the equation of what we can be doing. First of all, while I agree with Dr. Pierce that the CCOs are now starting to cover parts of mental health, they're not generally covering behavioral health, which is one of the major gaps in terms of trying to get especially young learners and at the other end of the spectrum, folks who are oftentimes homeless with mental health issues, access to necessary care. I actually, in the 2017 legislature, was one of the folks who voted in favor of expanding the Medicare and Medicaid project. As you know, that a couple of the legislators were not happy with that, and they brought ballot measure 101. I'm glad we were able to pass 101 by a pretty big margin and make sure that we kept that care, that critical care, so we could get to 95% coverage in the state of Oregon. That said, we have to look at controlling the costs from the pharmaceutical side. We also have to look at some of the changes in federal law. Since the president has come in, he's changed some of the implementation policies, and my goal in the next session is to help the Healthcare Committee work on trying to figure out how we can navigate some of those changes to get the best dollar out of the CCO program.
Thank you. We'll begin with question 3 with you, Mr. Evans. Do you think the balance between individual and corporate taxes is appropriate? And if you would relate this to your vision of what an ideal Oregon tax structure might look like.
Sure. So when it comes to taxation, it's sometimes the least popular thing to talk about. First of all, I actually believe in elimination of the corporate income tax. I think the corporate income tax right now is the Swiss cheese of taxes in the United States, especially in Oregon. I think that it's time to look at a different system that looks at sector-specific revenues, that protects small businesses, especially small businesses with under $5 million in revenues. I think that the legislature has struggled to do as much as we can with a tax system that has no sales tax, has very constrained property tax, and is very income dependent upon workers as opposed to corporations. The corporate income tax standard, the levels are actually relatively average with the United States, but the way in which there are carve-outs and protections, we have an unfair system. I want to emphasize that isn't at the fault of any corporation, it isn't the fault of anybody, it's just the way that the system is. And if we're going to build a 21st century economy and the services necessary to sustain it, it's time for comprehensive tax reform. But that starts with elimination of the corporate income tax as we know it.
Thank you. Ms. Pierce, question 3.
It is very important that those who are here in our state do pay taxes. I'm not saying paying a lot, but it is because it will support our system of government where it's for public safety, health care, education. So I would like the corporations to pay some, and I think at this time they do. However, oftentimes corporations do get carve-outs where they are not applied to small businesses. So they get a special deal, and that is not always in the best interest of our state. So there are, we are looking at different taxes because we do not have a sales tax here. We have a tension between the people paying property taxes and the citizens, because a lot of times the property taxes, which were reduced through Measure 5 and Measure 50 in the 90s, actually has made it very difficult to fund our education, because that's where most of the taxes used to come from and to pay for. But now that has gone down to about 30%, 35%, excuse me, and the state general fund now has to kick in about 65% to pay for our schools. So education is very important, so we must make sure that we do get the appropriate taxes so that we have a nice balance of property owners being happy, but also parents with kids who are happy.
Thank you. And question 4 goes to you, and it's, what steps would you take to ensure more Oregonians are qualified and hired for Oregon jobs?
Well, the first step is we must make sure that we have proper education and training for our students. We have a reputation of having the 47th worst graduation rate in the United States, and that is not what Oregonians deserve. When Bud and I came here, we had nothing but our education and training, and that was very helpful for us. So, first of all, we need to increase our graduation rate at the high school level. Many kids are telling me they are not interested in what they are teaching. So when I ask them, well, what are you interested in? And they tell me that they are interested in learning about drones, about doing some CAD/CAM, something that's hands-on that they can understand. And this actually is, having career technical education is very, very helpful in keeping kids interested in education, interested in high school. We are here in Salem-Keizer very fortunate that we do have a robust system in the high schools, but also a career technical education center. However, in the central school district in Monmouth and Independence, they tell me that there is not much there. So they are feeling that their students are not getting the benefit of that kind of training, because we do need many workers in those areas. They are high-paying jobs. They are very nice jobs. And it is something that as the baby boomers retire, we will be needing many more of them. So I hope that in something such as Measure 98 would be fully funded so that we can also improve on the career technical education in all of our schools.
Thank you. And Mr. Evans?
Well, thank you. As an educator, I take education and the development of a workforce for our economy very serious. I've been teaching at the community college and university level for on and off for the last 20 years and between deployments overseas. I sit on the education committee in the Oregon legislature, and I'm actually very grateful that we've been able to put more money into K-12 than people thought we could, given everything else. We're a little over $8.1 billion in this budget for education, and that's a significant piece. The problem is, when you look at the quality education model, we're still $1.5 billion short of the quality education model, which was a bipartisan Republican and Democrat initiative that basically explains to us what we need to educate students. And that was in the 1990s, before we had some of the transitions in terms of the economic upturn and the challenges that are facing families in poverty. So we have a lot of work to do on this. We've been focusing on early learning. We've also been putting as much money as we can into career technical education, workforce development. But the fact of the matter is, we have to find a stable, sustainable resource revenue stream in order to have the kinds of school districts and the kinds of outcomes that we want.
Thank you. Our next question goes to Mr. Evans. Do you have concerns regarding public education, and is there more that the state can do to address those concerns? So if you would like to expand on your answer there.
So yes, actually, as a member of the education committee and a former school board member and also a teacher in the classroom most every day, public education is something that is of a great concern to me for 3 reasons. Number one, I happen to think that we actually do a pretty decent job when you actually compare apples to other states in terms of graduation rates, because a lot of other states fudge the numbers from 9th to 10th grade. But that said, average is not good enough. We need to do better. We also need to teach citizenship. For a long time, we have emphasized testing and emphasized the latest educational idea instead of some of the basics that actually public school systems were formed for. How can we expect to live in a peaceful, prosperous community when we don't teach civics the way we should? And I actually have sponsored a piece of legislation every session trying to push that. I also think we have to look at how we fund higher education. I have a bill called the Guaranteed Opportunity Program that is all about restructuring student debt so that people can go into and out of learning over the course of their careers, because we're past the point where getting a diploma is the end of the journey. So we have a lot of work to do in education. I think we have to transition to the 21st century economy realities, and I'm hopefully looking forward to the opportunity to continuing that work.
Thank you. And Ms. Pierce?
When we look at public education, we always wonder, what can we get the most out of it? Because I went to public school through all my educational career, and it was wonderful. but I don't get that sense from the kids now. The teachers are trying really hard, but the students aren't really paying attention. I was tutoring in a class at North Salem High School. The kids were very respectful. There were probably a fourth of the kids really paying attention. So they were really suffering, because when they get out, what do they know? Not much. So when our kids do not have that background of learning, then they are not prepared to really move on to other education or training. So it's very important that we get students interested in what they are doing. And CTEC, or Career Technical Education, is very, very important. If a student takes at least just one class in the Career Technical Education, their graduation rate goes from 70-some% to 90%, which means they are interested. There was one kid that was having trouble, and then it turned out that he was doing very well. And so the teacher asked him, "Why are you paying attention now? Why are you doing so well?" His answer was, "I'm taking cabinet making and I need to know this material. So, and I need it, I know it, I'm not saying, why do I need to learn this?" So he is actually taking advantage of his education because he has something that he needs it to do. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take another question, and this one will begin with you, Ms. Pierce. I'd like for you to describe a critical issue facing this district, and how would you address it?
I noticed that even though we're one district, there is a disparity. Out in the Polk County, Monmouth Independence area, I hear a lot of people say, "We are totally disregarded. It's all about Salem." So in order to even that out, I think it's very, very important to make sure that the legislator goes out and talks to everyone and gets their opinion on issues, not just the area where they live. So it's something that I've seen across Oregon, that the smaller towns and the rural areas are actually left out of the picture. They are not considered. So it would be very nice if, when we're in the legislature, we look at all districts and look at all peoples, and not just the ones that have the money or who are into putting a lot of pressure on the legislators. We should look at the people, because the people are the ones that we represent. They are the ones we work for. They are the ones that we need to be there for.
Thank you. And Mr. Evans.
Thank you. I think the biggest issue that is visible in all three quadrants, or all three thirds, quadrants, there's not four, all three areas of the district, Monmouth Independence, West Salem, South Salem, is infrastructure. That's why I fought to get $60 million for the seismic upgrade of Center Street Bridge, so at least after a disaster, when we know we'll have one at some point, we have a bridge to get across the river to get to the hospital to have basic services. But we've also got to figure out a way about traffic congestion. I'm looking forward to what the City Council does with their traffic congestion task force. I also think that we have to look at all the bridges and all the roads that are 40 to 50 years or older, and make sure that we have good investment to make sure that businesses can actually utilize them to continue to grow. And when I look at infrastructure, I also think of broadband. When I was mayor of Monmouth, for the reasons that Dr. Pierce talked about, we had to build our own broadband because it was never going to come to Monmouth and Independence. We weren't a big enough market, but we were able to recognize that broadband and the access to the internet was the new 21st century farm to market road, so we built it. I think it's time that the state of Oregon recognizes that infrastructure is always a good investment, and hopefully we can continue to make even more investments in District 20.
Thank you both. At this time, we're going to go into our closing remarks, and we will begin with Mr. Evans.
I want to thank everybody for having this forum. I want to thank Dr. Pierce for being here. I want to thank the folks that you can't see behind the camera that make these things happen. I happen to believe that events like this are the way democracy is supposed to be. If you can get past the noise and the spin of the campaign that sometimes bombards us throughout the campaign season, these type of events, where people who want to do good for our community have an opportunity to come and share ideas, is what this process is supposed to be about. I'm asking for your vote this November 6th because I believe at the end of the day, service, leadership, and results matter, and I believe we have a shared vision. That shared vision is that Oregon should make sure that every Oregonian has an opportunity for success, not not a guaranteed success, but an opportunity for success. I think every Oregonian should understand that it's their right to have a safe environment, safe air, safe land, safe streets, safe waters. I think that every Oregonian has a right to protection of our thoughts, our actions, that you have a right to live, to love, and to continue being a part of a community without fear. And I also believe that every Oregonian has a right to be in an environment that is both sustainable as well as stewarded well. I think our election this November is going to be one of those historic moments where we look back upon it several years from now, and we hopefully recognize that the choices we made were aligned with our values and our vision. This is an important election. I ask you to look at both the candidates in this race, compare the voters pamphlet, listen to our words, and make the best choice for our state, our community, and ultimately for our nation. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. And Ms. Pierce, your closing remarks.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting us and having this forum. It is a great honor to be able to talk to the citizens. I have gone, as part of my campaign, door to door since March, even in the heat of the summer. So I went because I wanted to know who was in my district and what they need to know, and what they need because I was going to represent them. I was going to be working for them. They are the bosses. I am just here as an instrument to bring you to the Capitol. So it was very important. And I heard from the people, they want an educational system that works well, that is good for their kids and their grandkids. They were concerned about the homeless situation. They were noticing that homeless people seem to be increasing in number, though it's only about 1,600 in this community, 40% of which are women. But homeless people are not just those that you see on the streets. There are kids that are couch surfing. There are families that are destitute. So we need to find solutions for them. People are also concerned about affordable housing. Housing in this area has gone up 15 to 21% in some areas. And that becomes very difficult because wages have not kept up at that same pace. People are interested in their small businesses. They want their communities to thrive. They want their communities to be vibrant. They want their communities to provide them the jobs that they want. So we need to really look at our core issues and work on making them better. I am known for working hard, having integrity, giving back to my community, and getting the job done. It's time to take that to the legislature. I will be there for you. So I hope I can earn your support, and thank you very much.
Thank you to the candidates and to Capitol Community TV for this opportunity. This is all the time we have. You've been watching Your Vote Counts, a candidate interview for Legislative House District 20 with Mr. Paul Evans and Ms. Selma Pierce. We hope you will watch our other candidate forums, and please see the CCTV website for time and dates of the airings. These programs are a public service to voters to become more acquainted with candidates who hope to lead our city, county, and state governments in the coming years. The last date to register to vote or make changes to your registration is October 16th. Ballots will begin to appear around October 17th, and they should be returned by November 6th at 8 p.m. Please remember, postmarks do not count. We urge you to make democracy work and be a voter. This is Bernadine Anderson for the League of Women Voters and CCTV, thanking you for watching Your Vote Counts.